Today we're going to be looking at Up the Ladder, Session 13. Today I'm going to teach you that when reading narrative nonfiction, readers focus on the same elements they focus on when reading: characters, the setting, the plot, and change. So for the past few weeks, we've been reading all sorts of nonfiction books. Starting today, we're going to give our attention to a special kind of nonfiction book called a narrative nonfiction. Many people love narrative nonfiction because it puts two wonderful things together: learning about the world and reading exciting stories. Narrative nonfiction is a way of teaching information through stories you've read. You've read stories before, and you've read nonfiction before. In this bend, you'll have a chance to put those things together. In fact, you've already had some exposure to narrative nonfiction in this unit. When we read the Beastly Tales, some of those sections were written like stories, and other sections were written like all the expository texts. Today I'm going to teach you that the readers of both fiction and of narrative nonfiction pay attention to the same key elements all stories have: character, setting, plot, and change. In other words, readers use everything they know about understanding, what they know about their understanding that make up stories to help them understand true stories. So here are the elements of fiction that we need to review that are also going to be in our narrative nonfiction. Characters. We're going to have main characters. We're going to have supporting characters. We might have a protagonist, which is we consider our hero, our main character. We might have an antagonist, who is a person opposing that, trying to keep them from doing what they want to do. We also will have a setting. We'll have the where and when the story takes place. So there will be a time period. You might be able to know the season, the year. They might be able to tell you the locations, such as the mountains, the beach, in Africa, in Europe. So the where and the when. The third element is a plot. So remember, our plot is just the events of our story in the order that it happens. So we will have events in our story that are in the order that we would see on our plot map, from the exposition, the rising action, climax, falling action, and the conclusion, or the denouement. And also, we're going to look for the fact that our characters are also going to change, just like in a fiction book. Our narrative nonfiction will also have characters that change. Some characters are going to change in a positive way. They become better people. Other characters may change for the worst. We're going to start reading nubs today as a read aloud, and we're going to identify these 4 parts of our story. So our read aloud is nubs: the true story of a mutt and a marine in a miracle. Notice how it says true story. That's what makes it nonfiction, but it is told in the form of a story. Outside a border fort in the desert of western Iraq, a small, thin dog watched and waited. His ears had been cut off to make him a dog of war. He had no name and no person to call his own. If we stop right here, we're going to be thinking one of our elements of fiction: setting. They've already identified the setting. Where are we? Stop and pause yourself. Where are we? Yes, it says we are in western Iraq. So we are in the Middle East, and they're in a desert. That's what's surrounding them. So we know it's a desert situation. And we've also been introduced here to our main character, one of our main characters, which is the dog. Okay? We know so far this dog has no name, and he doesn't have an owner. We know that his ears were cut. Maybe like when they tip the dog's ears is what I'm thinking. So let's see. Oh, I can just look at that picture now. I can see how his ear is cut off. The whole top part of it is cut off. So now it's like a circular shape. Despite his size, he was the leader of his pack, a group of wild dogs that survived by eating desert mice and rats and scraps from the Iraqi soldiers stationed at the fort. Okay, so far I know that they've had a tough life, right? They're a pack of wild dogs and they have to eat mice and rats, so there's no one to feed them a dinner every day. As the dogs scanned the desert for a possible meal, the stillness of the fall morning was broken by the roar of engines rumbling closer and closer. He hunkered down in the sand. 3 military Humvees carrying Major Brian Dennis and his 10 Marines lumbered to a stop. They were part of a border transition team, 352, there to help train the Iraqi soldiers. Okay. The other pack dogs raced to greet the men. So here's a picture of the other dogs running up to a soldier. But the dog without ears cautiously approached Brian, who knelt down on one knee to meet him. So you can tell in the story he wasn't greeting happily. He looked kind of cautious just in his posture, right? And this here is our other main character, Brian, okay? Remember, he is a U.S. Marine there to help train Iraqi soldiers. Here we have a picture of Brian Dennis hitting our dog that looks like he's letting him pet him on the belly. It looks like he has finally accepted him and is no longer afraid. This is a quote down here from Brian. I call him Nubs because his ears look like little nubs. Remember, the dog's ears were cut off. So this here is a part of a letter that Brian Dennis wrote. The subject is Desert Dog, date October 2007. So we have a date now. We have a time our setting takes place, which is in October of 2007. I found a dog in the desert. I call him Nubs because his ears look like little nubs. We clicked right away. He flips on his back and makes me rub his stomach. I taught him to sit and shake in about 5 minutes. So today what you're going to do is you are going to take the first 5 pages of Nubs and you're going to identify those same story elements that we talked about earlier. So your job today is going to be to identify our main characters and tell me about each. Tell me the setting, the where and the when. Tell me the plot. What are the big events that happened so far? Not just one thing. And the way the characters have changed. So far, we have seen Nubs make a change.